My fellow Ambazonians, this is Dr. Cho Ayaba. Happy Country Sunday to our brave people on Ground Zero. I want to make a couple of comments on ongoing issues in our struggle for freedom. And this message is simply meant to reassure our people on the scope and depth of commitment that we have. The foundation of any liberation struggle is measured in the scope and depth of the commitment of the people. And secondly, on the irrational action of the enemy. And on these two count, we are we are in good territory. Let me thank our forces in Bui once more. I know I have stated this before, for coming together and for agreeing to work together. And I hope and pray that this commitment to collaborate on both offensive and defensive action is real, and that they will be allowed, to build on these initial successes to strengthen their grip in the state of Bui, Ngokitungia, and why not Ndonga, and even including Menchum. We have watched videos from Momo. You remember, few months we thought things like this were impossible. We had been following in the background discussions amongst the commanders and the different forces. We had seen photos and videos of meetings. And so we were confident that somehow there will be a breakthrough. And that breakthrough has come thanks to the tireless effort of some actors who have thus far worked in good faith to make sure that we can bridge the gap between our forces. Gone are those days when the gullibles will use cheap propaganda to blackmail forces, to blackmail individuals, to keep us divided for the purpose of their entitlement. A united force is more effective. It doesn't take away the relevance of political leaders. And I am definitely very sure that what we are seeing will not only be measured by the cohesion, but by the outcomes in combat and territorial control. I also call on our people in Momo to support these endeavors, to reject anyone or any groups of individuals who seek to intoxicate, manipulate them, or manipulate forces to hate each other. And yesterday I spoke to our commanders in Mezam who were meeting. I spoke to commanders of other forces, and I can assure you that the spirit is positive, extremely very positive. And we must always encourage, these endeavors, these baby steps. They are the building blocks of great things to come. I hope that these efforts by our forces will receive positive support from our people across the globe, who in their kindness in the past 5 years have been able to sustain the resistance, to strengthen our resolve, to market our struggle internationally. And I'm definitely very sure that they are going to embrace these positive outcomes for the independence of our country. My fellow people, on the 11th of February 1961, our country was coerced into a plebiscite to decide whether to attach to Nigeria or to Cameroon, in violation of the spirit of the trusteeship agreement. As a Category B trust territory with a self-government, territorial borders, international borders based on international treaties, the first democracy within the continent of Africa that had organized 3 elections, overseeing a peaceful transfer of power through a democratic process, a country that had provided security in terms of asylum to persecuted Cameroonians. It was unjust to organize any plebiscite. It would have been fair to simply terminate the trust that was bestowed to the Brits and to ensure that our government overtook control of our institutions of the state and proceed as an independent country. Since 1961, our country has been subsequently annexed based on this fraud of the 11th of February. The annexationist has imposed an obligatory celebration of our day of enslavement and deprivation, and forced us to worship its flag, sing its anthem, and paraded our kids from our schools, to pay homage to an incursion that robbed us of freedom and dignity and a homeland of our own. In the past 5 years, we have reversed the course of history through our various actions. We have rejected celebrating the 11th of February, and this resistance must continue. On Friday, the 11th of February, Ambazonia will be on lockdown. I know such lockdowns is an additional imposition of difficulties on our people. But if that's the pathway we must uphold to regaining our sovereignty, I ask of all of you to commit to it. We will have to sacrifice more to be free. The enemy is determined because it has a lot to lose, relinquish its illegal presence in our homeland. We will have to sacrifice even more if we will want to give to the next generation something better. We will have to endure more. Those locked up in jail are determined. Our soldiers who've been in battles for the past 4 years are determined. Entire population, through their actions on Mondays, have shown their collective defiance to an illegal system imposed in our homeland. My fellow countrymen and women, we are in a good place. I know we tend to focus on the negative as a measure of our commitment, our determination, and our progress. The barometer you choose, the indicators you choose to measure how far you've gone, will determine whether you are positive or negative. As far as I'm concerned, the clear indicators were explained to you people at the onset of the armed defense of our country, making the territory ungovernable for the enemy. That has been positive. Delegitimizing political rule in our land, those have been relegated to armor cars. Making sure we increase the cost of the occupation of our country, nearly bankrupted the system. Making sure we internationalize our struggle and make diplomats come to us. That we have been very successful. Given a PR disaster in the organization of AFCON, we saw it with our own eyes. These are the indicators we must use to measure whether in the last 5 years we've made progress or not. And I think we have made progress. Another way of measuring is doing comparative analysis with other struggles. Where were the Eritreans 5 years after they initiated the armed resistance? Where were the East Timorese? Where were the South Sudanese, the Kosovars? We're far ahead of them. That doesn't mean we can't still be defeated. And that's why I understand when you talk about coercion. I would have preferred all of you focus on strategy rather than a fluid concept of unity. I would have preferred we all focus on a strategy that has worked and that still works. But because of the overwhelming cry of our people that we must find a way to work together, we have to make that effort. I know the ongoing crisis within the camp of Dr. Sako is another big distraction. It shouldn't be a distraction. It shouldn't also be a surprise. Because in 2017, when most of you rejoice when a few men met in Zaria, Nigeria, and used foreign military to declare and impose themselves as a government without any due process and consent of the Ambazonian people, we shouldn't then be surprised why any internal crisis within such a structure is going to be seen as generalized chaos. How can we justify that we are fighting to end Cameroon's imposition, occupation, annexation, and tyranny on our people, and at the same time will even tolerate scavengers and impostors parading themselves as the government of Ambazonia without any due process? Our people are going through Holocaust, a hellish scorched earth policy, massive displacement and suffering because of Cameroon's political fraud and manipulation. We must never, Ambazonians, allow the future of our people and the destiny of our nation to be erected on fraud, dubious claims, manipulation, and propaganda. Cameroon deprived and excluded our people from political organization, association, and participation. Anyone who questioned their illegality was and is still threatened, tortured, jailed, and even executed. Ambazonia is still under that brutal occupation with an ongoing genocide. Yet those imposing themselves as governments were so audacious to ban movements, leaders, defense groups, and in so doing creating a toxic atmosphere that has resulted in skirmishes and infighting. Funds raised for the protection of our people and liberation of our homeland through such programs as DOD's, ARA, My Trip to Boya, Amber Bonds, have been swindled. Fighters deprived, deceived, and frustrated. Communities left unprotected, and our people defenseless. Diplomatically, we used strategic diplomatic tools like targeted diplomacy to alter policies, to influence policies, to be able to have governments speak about our case, to gain international recognition. But the perceived group endless scandals and embezzlement and misappropriation of liberation funds has tarnished the image of our liberation struggle. These are group happenings. These actions or corruption, embezzlement, deals or no deals are actions of a group. But because they've proclaimed themselves as the legitimate representative of the Ambazonian people, the benefits they have gotten from these deals have been private. The scandals are not only public, they are now our scandals. My fellow Ambazonians, we have lost hundreds of thousands of our people since 1961. How many hundreds of children have been murdered by the occupiers because of this embezzlement, misappropriation of funds, entitlement, arrogance? How many hundreds of our fighters or even thousands have been killed because they were not armed or properly armed? How many diplomats have withdrawn their support for our struggle? How many thousands of Ambazonians have given up on the struggle because of these actions? We may never really know. But the question you must ask yourself, if during the process of liberation, if during the process, the struggle for freedom, people can be this corrupt to embezzle funds during a period of genocide, imagine, just close your eyes and imagine for a few moments that the levers of power and all its instrumentalizations were bestowed in the hands of these people, with the police, the military, everything in their hands. What would happen to the coffers of the state? What will happen to our hospitals? What will happen to our education? What will happen to our welfare system if in a period of genocide in the 21st century, visible, people can act in such a contempt to the rule of law, transparency, acts of tolerance and compromise? What will you expect if the levers of power, with all its trappings, were given to them? It's in your hands, Ambazonians. It's in your hands. But this is what I like to tell you. You have a choice between an inclusive negotiation strategy that brings together our bloggers, that brings together our social media activists, that brings together our forces, that brings together our political leaders, that brings together our refugees, that brings together everyone, and brings together experts to help bat for us on the issues. Or you can choose secret discussions with intelligence officers in Yaoundé. Or you can choose bilateral and ill-prepared discussions in Geneva. The choice is yours to decide whether you want an inclusive political process that brings together all of those who have sacrificed within the framework of a transitional authority, that would elect transitional leaders with the powers to discuss constitutions, to design the kind of economic system that we are going to have, to begin to look on the issues of negotiations. Or you can throw your weight behind a few people who are assembled where two or three are gathered and appointed themselves as presidents without due process and have wrecked this liberation struggle, embezzled millions. There is a space for everyone in the models we have proposed. In the model we have proposed, no leader will use the military to impose themselves. You will be able to become the president of Ambazonia. You may be able to become the prime minister of Ambazonia. You will become a genuine, elected political leader that can be held accountable using laws and institutions that cannot be dissolved unilaterally, that cannot be abolished unilaterally. In our model, there is transparency. Corruption is a worse crime than murder. Corrupt leaders should not only be banished, they should be prosecuted and jailed for life. You will need leaders that cannot be corrupted politically and financially, who will not make appointments based on the amount of money that you give them. There will be institutions that cannot be overthrown. I'll give you an example. The United Kingdom does not have a term limit for a prime minister. So in the United Kingdom, a prime minister can last for 20 terms. But the United Kingdom has created institutions that regulate how long a prime minister can be. Those institutions are in the political parties, because political parties invest in people who can win elections. They invest in people who can preserve a mandate. And each time a political party realizes that you've become a liability to their ability to win elections, to preserve the mandate and gain credibility, you're going to be changed. That's how most leaders have gone. Tony Blair, Margaret Thatcher, Chamberlain, Winston Churchill. Most were not defeated in elections. They became a liability to their own political platform. We need a state where no leader, even if his name is Jesus Christ, will be given a blank check to decide on the political destiny without regulation, to decide on the economic output without regulation. We are fighting and dying for a state that gives opportunity to a little child in the village, even if that child knows nobody in the levels of power of the state. We are working extremely very hard to ensure that we can build bridges amongst ourselves. But one thing I want to let you know, it is impossible for movements to build bridges with people who call themselves a government. Until these instrumentalizations are dissolved and banished, it will be difficult, nearly impossible. We are ready in the Ambazonian Governing Council to fight for the next 15 years. We will not blink, shake in no day to accept any platform that is based on illegality.